Okay. I'm so pleased that you're here tonight, even though that virus is out there.
What virus? A virus?
It's a virus. I hope everybody hit the elbows today. And we have plenty. The BOC is apparently what you want high. No, the BAC. We were talking about this at the run. You want the BAC high, and that will kill the virus. So there's lots of beer there, and it's on ice this month because I knew it would get hotter. And I know I have an English wife. She hates beer that's on ice, and I get in trouble when I don't put it on ice. So it's on ice tonight. So we just had one of our races, Frostbite 5-miler. We had a really good showing there. I was very pleased with that. Do you remember how many we had total there? I want to say like 23?
Over 12 USATF people, and then probably another 5 or 6 members of the club that are not affiliated with SJAC and USATF.
And so our score was similar to 2 years ago. So that was good, right?
It could still be better.
It could be better, but it was similar to 2 years ago. So I'm happy. We're back up on that.
Well, it's better than last year. I only had 2 people.
The next run, I hope it goes.
I hope all of them go.
Right now, Dave is saying if the high school doesn't cancel high school, then he's going to do the run. So that's where adrenaline is. It's based on whether the high school closes or not. So that's March 21st. And then there's Boston. And Joe has a Boston team for SJAC. He's got a women's team and a men's team.
Masters teams.
Masters teams going.
If we had open runners, we could make teams for them.
So if you know anybody, I think we need more on the women's team, right? Or is that at 3?
There's 3, but Daisy's not at SJC anymore this year. There's 2.
We'll convince her. We need to convince her that.
We don't care.
And then after that's the Broad Street Run, and we're all set for those. I don't know about the Revolutionary.
I do that every year with my veterans group.
The Revolutionary 5-miler?
Yeah, at
Great.
Valley Forge. Yeah.
Okay. So it'd be nice to get some members, scoring members on that run as well. So I'll have to send some emails out and try to get some numbers up for that. On that. And there's, the pictures are of the Frostbite 5-miler. So there's some of the people there, and then other people in the lower one. You see Mike Series there. It was Joe in the top one. So they were out warming up. You know, Joe's in both of them with the fancy glasses. Okay. And then Nevin manned the table, and that was really nice. She had lots of people come by and got lots of publicity there. So I was very pleased with that.
Hey, Robert, I was just going to say, just mention that one race after Broad Street so people are aware it's on there. Because it's brand new this year. I'm sorry, after Moorestown.
The Memorial Main Street Mile. How fast can you run the mile?
Where's that?
On the road?
Where is it?
Main Street.
Mystery.
It's on Main Street.
Somebody look it up. Click on the link. If you click on the link, you know where it is. Those are links are clickable.
Go upstairs and get
Do you
one of the
remember?
pink flyers in the front of the room, in front of the store.
In DA though, right?
Yeah, it's in, okay. It's in,
How many towns have Main Street?
Yeah, that's
it
right.
can't be too many.
Yeah, that's right. Okay.
We didn't guess.
So then we always like to push our group runs. And there's a picture of our Haddonfield group run starting at 7:30 a.m. And the picture below is the Pittman group run starting at various times from, actually the Haddonfield starts at 6 if you're running with the girls. And so does the Pittman start at 6 and various times. We try to all meet up at 8 a.m. for the picture. And then we go on for more. Last week was the goat run. So there were many photographs of the goats. But the people I was with didn't want to stop. Mike was there. He was pushing on. He didn't want to stop for the goats. And so I didn't get a picture of the goats. Track workouts will resume shortly. There's a rumor out that we'll get a Facebook alert that they might be on select Saturdays. And then we'll start on Tuesdays last Tuesday of May. For that.
Williamstown track.
Yeah, which track is the track workouts?
Williamstown.
They'll
Williamstown
start in Williamstown.
starts in Williamstown and ends in Pittman.
I've been running 3 years.
Okay. And then there's another set of track workouts that's closer to here that is on Tuesday nights. If you're interested in that, let me know. There's a group of runners that are the Wednesday night runners that do that.
That's at night, not in the morning?
That's at night.
Oh, okay. So you-
That's at night. All these are at night.
Okay.
Yeah. And then
Except for
the,
the Sunday Haddonfield, that's in the morning, right?
yeah, that's in the morning. So the only morning
And-
run is the
and-
Sunday
And
run.
the Pittman.
The Pittman, yes. So all Sunday runs are early in the morning. And then Thursday is the 13th Child. Everybody know who the 13th Child is?
Jersey Devil.
The Jersey Devil. We have New Jersey people in here. So can we get the devil to go after that virus?
You gotta go out to Leeds Point for that.
Okay, and that's what happens after the runs. You either go to Starbucks in Haddonfield. This is the Pittman Bakery in Pittman. And so we have a nice crew there, and they have very low prices. The coffee there is dirt cheap, and the donuts are 1/5 the price of Starbucks. So
They have
if you want to
scones?
save money, come to Pittman.
For $1.50 to get coffee and donuts instead of change.
$1.50.
It's
All
no
right.
Latte Larry's.
So I want to advertise next month's talk. It's big marathon month. And Mike Moran, who's sitting in the back there, is going to talk to us about the strategy that you should be doing for any marathon, but especially the Boston Marathon. On that. So that'll be a very interesting talk. And with that, we're going to introduce our next speaker. Welcome on up.
All right. Okay, I've been asked to introduce Sky. My name is Tom Osler. Sky is probably, quite likely, the most unusual person you will ever have here giving a talk. He's a very good speaker. I met him, I don't know, probably 20 years ago. He was a student in my class. I've been teaching for about 60 years now, consecutive years. And I can tell you that Sky is the second most gifted mathematically student I've ever had.
Wow.
Who's the first?
He's brilliant mathematically.
He's no Brian Williams.
He's also extraordinarily eccentric, sort of like, think of me and go, cut off his ear, you know, that kind of thing. To give you an example, a couple of years ago, he comes up to me and he says, I want to do the Ironman triathlon. I said, oh, really? He says, yeah, I'm going to do it in 6 weeks. So he's not only going to do the Ironman, but he puts a time limit on the preparation. So we go to the pool at LA Fitness, and he can't even do a lap. He can't do 25 meters. But yet, in 6 weeks later, he managed to do the 2.4 miles swim in the allotted time, you know, for the Ironman, which is amazing, really, you know, that he managed to succeed in getting there. That absolutely amazed me. He then went into the bike, and then he started stopping and helping people whose bikes had broken. And I think he did that so he wouldn't meet the qualification to do the run, so he wouldn't have to do the run. But he won't say that. But anyway, he's a good soul. So now this book is most extraordinary. Okay, and I think of it as reminding us of what people knew 100, 200 years ago when people had to do a lot of footwork. You know, if you wanted to cross the country, you know, with a wagon train or so, you didn't train for it. You were just expected to do it. You were just expected to be able to walk with these things. And this was normal, you know, unlike today where we get in our car and drive to the corner. And that's been forgotten. And that kind of thing comes up here in this book. So, what else can I say? Here is Sky Waterpeace.
So, thank you, Tom, for that bang-up introduction. Almost none of it is true, for the record. It was 15 weeks I gave myself to do the Ironman. But the part about not being able to swim one lap is true. I literally told him I don't know how to swim. He said, well, show me how to swim one lap. And I said, I don't think you understand. And he said, no, just show me what you got. So I had to stop 3 times and learn to breathe. In any event, so my name is Sky Waterpeace. I'm a mathematician by profession. I teach at Rowan University. And I've recently published this book. I have 2 versions, pink version and a green version. So they're identical except for the title. This one is called The Lazy Man's Guide to Ultramarathoning, and the pink one is called The Lazy Man's Guide to Ultramarathon Running. There's a funny story as to why there's 2 titles, but I'll tell you later. So let's see, where to start. So I got into running because I had a friend named George who used to go to the diner all the time, and one night, late night after the diner, he says to me, you know, every year in Pittman they have this 4th of July parade, and we get there early, and there are these guys running a foot race. And you know, it's South Jersey, and it's hot, it's humid in July, and I think, man, these guys are crazy. And then I think, you know, I should do that sometime. And every year, these guys are crazy, I should do that sometime. And he said it was a 5K. Now, it turns out it was a 4 mile, for those of you who know. But he said it was a 5K, and he said, I've always wanted to run a 5K, he says to me. And I said, yeah, I've always wanted to run a marathon. Because to me, they're both a far distance. I didn't, you know, 5K, marathon, it was just, if I had to run, it was too far. So he tells me about this program, which you refer to as Couch Potato to 5K. I'm sure some of you have heard of Couch to 5K, and he says it's a 3-month program, and he's going to give himself 5 months, and he's going to train for it. And I say, man, good for you. Now, you got to understand, George is 285 pounds at the time, and he's got, you know, not a good heart, open heart surgery, and he had, you know, his knees were bad, his ankles were bad. So he says he's going to train for this race, he's going to do it. And I say, good for you, George, man, that's terrific. And then he says, so you want to run it with me? And I just looked at him and said, I just told him I want to run a marathon someday. And I said, how far is 5K? And he said, it's 3.1 miles, which again, just to me, didn't mean anything. But I said, and it was February. I figured I didn't have to start training till April. So I said, sure, because I figured I'd back out later. So I said I was going to do it. And I looked it up online. Now, at that point, I hadn't worn shoes in about a year. I've been walking around barefoot everywhere. So the first thing I knew, the only thing I knew about running was you got to get the right shoes, right? So I thought, well, do I have to get the right shoes, or is that just something people say? So I looked it up online, and I came across all this stuff about barefoot running, and I thought, all right, I'll give that a try. So then I looked up some more stuff, and I thought, you know, all right, if I'm going to do this, I just don't really want it to be that hard. You know, I want to take it easy as possible. So I decided to lose some weight, and the way I had successfully lost weight before was using what we now call a ketogenic diet, which used to be called Atkins, the Atkins diet. I had been very successful with that. So I go on the Atkins diet. I had about 6 weeks to lose weight, and I vaguely remembered reading years and years ago something about the Atkins diet and endurance. And so at the time, it was really, really difficult to look this stuff up, but I ended up coming across this paper from the 70s by a man named Stephen Phinney, who was an exercise physiologist. And Stephen Phinney had taken 6 people, put them on a strict ketogenic diet for a month. Now, before putting them on the diet, he had them walk on a treadmill till exhaustion. And the average time to exhaustion was, let me see if I can get this right, 2.5 hours. Okay, that was the average. Now, 4 weeks on a diet, in a metabolic ward, so everything that they ate was monitored, diet was strictly controlled. They were not allowed to exercise at all. After 4 weeks, they had lost an average of about 18-20 pounds. So whatever each person had lost, they had to wear in a backpack and then go back on the treadmill. The average time to exhaustion went up 60%. It went up to 4 hours. So Steve Finney later did some more research. He was a bicyclist, and he did research on bikers and everything else. And it would come to find out that the ketogenic diet, basically, long story short, ketogenic diet is you restrict the carbohydrates dramatically, and it forces your body to become super efficient at burning fat. And what happens is the muscles, the mitochondrial density of your muscles goes up. Mitochondria are the little like power factories that extract ATP, which is the energy that your muscles use from fat and glucose and other things. So when you go on a ketogenic diet, your mitochondrial density goes up, so you have more mitochondria per gram of muscle, and the mitochondria themselves become more efficient at processing ATP from other substrates. So all right, so I'm on a ketogenic diet anyway. I do the ketogenic diet for 6 weeks. I do some more research. I come across a book by a man named Stu Middleman called Slow Burn, Slow Down, Burn Fat, and Release the Energy Within, or something like that. Stu Middleman was the 1,000-mile champion for quite a long time. It was recently, no, I'm sorry, he was the 1,000-mile champion at one time in the 80s. He was the 6-day champion for quite a long time, but was his six-day record was beat a few years ago. Anyway, he wrote this book that was all about heart rate training. The Mathematician method. Mathematician trained Stu Middleman, and Stu Middleman ascribes his success in long distance running to the Mathematician method, which basically is slow down and run according to your heart rate. Run so your heart rate is in a specific range. The easy way to do it is take 180, subtract your age. That should be your top heart rate. For most people, that seems abysmally slow. You'll be running and it'll be like, give me a break here. But for me, it seems a little bit too fast, actually. No, I'm kidding. So anyway, I started Couch to 5K, and I had been doing the ketogenic diet. I had dropped about 20 pounds, and I got a heart rate monitor watch, and I just did all my runs according to my heart rate. And everybody made fun of me for how slowly I ran, but I always had plenty of energy. So here's the thing. There's different substrates, but the two main substrates for fuel use are glucose and fatty acid. All right, there's some other stuff like pyruvate and things like that that are in the mix, but glucose in the presence of oxygen, in other words, if you have enough oxygen that you're not running an all-out sprint like to save your life, in the presence of oxygen, glucose gives you about 36 to 38 molecules of ATP from one molecule of glucose. Fatty acid, depending on the size of the fatty acid molecule, it varies a bit. But if you have enough oxygen to burn fatty acid, and you need more oxygen than you do for glucose, but if you have enough available, you get about 400 molecules of ATP per molecule of fatty acid. So the upshot, if I had to condense this talk into like 1 minute, is slow the hell down. Because if you run a little bit slower, so you have more oxygen available, then you have, proportionally speaking, more access to burning fat. And every molecule of fatty acid gives you more than 10 times as much ATP, which is the energy you actually use, than a molecule of glucose. So, long story shorter, I ran the 4-miler. By the time I ran the 4-miler, I had read this book called The 4-Hour Marathon. Some of you probably read it. 4 months to a 4-hour marathon. And I got all pumped up, and I thought, I want to run a marathon. Because see, before I started running, it just seemed to me it was going to be hard. Once I realized that if you just run slowly enough, it's not that hard, I thought, well, maybe I could do this. So I looked at different training plans online, and I looked at the things I had done, and I designed myself a training plan because I'm a mathematician and I think I know better. And I ended up going from never having run in my life, footnote, I had run one time, but I'll tell you about that in a minute. Never having run pretty much ever as of April 1st to running my first marathon 7.5 months later in November, the Philadelphia Marathon. And 2 days after the Philadelphia Marathon, I got an email from the charity I had run for, Back on My Feet, and they were advertising a 24-hour race. And having just completed a marathon, which had been a dream of mine for years, but I also wanted to, walk on the moon too. I figured it would never happen. Having just come off of running my first marathon successfully, I thought I could do anything. 24-hour race, I remember reading about this crazy old guy who used to run 50 miles for fun. His name was Tom Oscar. And in one of his books, he talked about how he would, a few times a year run from Glassboro down to Atlantic City, a distance of about 50 miles for fun. Now, when I first read that, about a person doing 50 miles on foot, it literally was hard to believe. because in my mind, a marathon was like the pinnacle of athleticism. Like if you could run a marathon, that was it. Superhuman people could do it, normal people couldn't. And it just never occurred to me that you could go further than that. So when I read about Tom doing it, it literally took me about 3 days of thinking about it. Like, is that true? Is that really possible? You know. So anyway, 2 days after the marathon, I read about this 24-hour race, and I whipped up a quick Excel spreadsheet. I thought, you know what, I could probably train up to 50 miles between now and July. So then I didn't run at all for 6 weeks, just to make sure I was sure about what I was doing. And in January, I got a case of bronchitis, and I had a real serious fever, and I was off of work for a couple days, and in a fever delirium, I signed up for the race. True story. True story. So I did my first 50-miler in 24 hours. Being a mathematician and calculating things, I figured I could pretty much walk it if I had to. I had all kinds of plans. I taught myself to sleep in half-hour increments. I spent 6 weeks only sleeping a half an hour at a time, on the theory that when I was tired during the race, I could lay down, take a half-hour deep sleep, and then wake up and be refreshed. That didn't work, by the way. Not that the half-hour sleep didn't work. I did train myself to sleep in a half an hour, and to this day I can lay down for a nap, go into a deep sleep, have dreams and everything, and wake up fully refreshed. It's amazing. And just in case anyone's worried about my health, I did wear a sleep mask. But anyway, I was hooked. You know, I of course a lot of you I'm sure know, we're in the right crowd for it. You know, running can be addictive. And when I first started running the Couch to 5K, I had no intention of going beyond the 5K. It was going to be that time I ran a 5K, like a little story to tell. And the 5th week of the program was the first time I ran 20 minutes without stopping. And I was dreading it for 5 weeks. I was like, how am I ever going to do this, you know? And then when I did the first time I did that 20-minute run without stopping, the next day I woke up and my first thought was, I should go for a run. And it was like something clicked over in my brain. And from that point on, it was like I loved running. And so I went on, I did the 24-hour race. I successfully completed 50 miles. In training for that, I had done a second marathon, and then I started running marathons. And I found that if I run regularly, I feel better, mentally speaking. And I have a dear friend who said, you know, some people run away from their problems. You literally run away from your problems. That fall, I signed up for my 3rd marathon, the Philadelphia Marathon. I was going to run it the 2nd time. And I actually ended up going through a divorce during that fall. It was like everything fell apart. And I kept scheduling myself for a long run and then missing it because of stuff that was going on, personal stuff going on. And so I had done a half marathon in September, and then it was about halfway to November, and I hadn't done any more long runs since then. And so I started thinking about that ketogenic diet again. And I had just recently read the book Body by Science, which is all about super efficient training for weightlifting. And so I came up with this crazy idea that I thought, you know what, if I can't run enough long runs, I'll just not run any. And I'll just do a ketogenic diet. I'll do squats for leg strength and leg lifts for hip flexor strength and everything like that. And I did one more long run the week before the marathon, 8 days prior to the marathon. I did a long run, and that was mostly to work out my pacing strategy. And I showed up to the marathon with the intention of walking the first 3 minutes out of every mile and then running to the mile marker. And I gave myself permission to slow down after 16 miles, because I find that about 16 miles is where you start to feel a little bit funny. And that's what I did. I ran the whole first mile because, you know, I just started. Although that was a mistake I no longer make. From now on, when I start a race, I always start out walking. But I ran the first mile, and then I walked 3 minutes out every mile, and that became my go-to race pace from then on. I took 20 minutes off my I took 20 minutes off of my marathon time from my second marathon, which was more than an hour off my first marathon time. And that was it. I thought, all right, well, that worked out pretty well. So then that spring, I signed up for 3 marathons and a half marathon in 3 weeks. So it was 22 days from the New Jersey Marathon was on a Sunday, and then the Delaware Marathon the following Sunday. The following Saturday was the Brooklyn Half Marathon, and the Sunday after that was the Buffalo Marathon. 22 days start to finish, and just for just to make things fun. I didn't train at all for 8 weeks to completely, I didn't do any running or walking to detrain myself. And then in the couple months leading up to that marathon, those 22 days, I did a total of 22 miles of training, of which 16 miles was running and 6 miles was walking. And that was my only training other than the races themselves. So that worked out pretty well. And then I thought, all right, well, by that time I'd come up with the idea for the book, The Lazy Man's Guide to Ultramarathon Running. And I thought, well, this is, see, if you look at the book, the ultra is in brackets. So it's for marathoning or ultramarathoning. But I thought I really wanted to try it on an ultra. You know, I had done the 50-mile before. I was signed up for that 24-hour race in July. And that year they had a really bad heat wave and it got canceled. So then I was all full of, you know, piss and vinegar, and I didn't have a race to run. So I waited to hear if they were going to reschedule, and then ended up in August. I said, well, this is ridiculous. I got to finish this book. So I went to lunch with Tom Osler on a Tuesday, and I said, tonight I'm going to run 50 miles. And he said, what are you talking about? And I said, I'm going to go to the track at Pittman and I'm going to run 50 miles. Do you think I should ask for permission or should I just do it? And he said, it's easier to ask forgiveness than permission. And I said, good call. So at 7 o'clock p.m. I went to the track at Pittman. I started running. And I made it till about 22 miles and the police kicked me out. And it's a funny story. It's in my book. But various people from Facebook had showed up to like cheer me on and this and that, and so I'm running with a guy from Pennsylvania, and I come around the loop and there's a flashlight in my face. He said, what are you doing? I said, oh yeah, I'm running the 50-mile time trial. I figured it was one of you guys, you know. And he goes, not here, you're not. And thinking it was one of my buddies, I'm like, oh yeah, you know, I'm 22 miles in. He goes, not here, you're not. And then I realized it was a police officer, and he was not happy to see me. I later found out, he was real grumpy. I later found out that there had been a drug bust in one of the town parks, like earlier in the week. So he comes up to the high school track, and there's two cars there, one of which has out-of-state plates, and I got a cooler there with all my stuff, so I don't know what he thought was going on. But so he kicked me out, and I ended up going and running up and down. There's a quarter-mile stretch on Broadway that I had. I did 7 miles there until I realized I was going uphill both ways because there was a dip. So then I had previously figured out that it's a quarter mile around the block from my old apartment. So I switched to my old apartment, which, let me tell you something. When it's 4 o'clock in the morning and you're doing a 50-mile time trial by yourself, past your apartment for 17 miles, it took some mental energy, let me tell you. At one point I had to pee, so I went upstairs, and the whole time I go, I'm not going to sit down, I'm not going to sit down, I'm not going to sit down, because I was afraid if I sat down I wouldn't get back up. But I finished that 50 miles. That was my, only the second time I'd done 50 miles. I finished it in, I think, 13 hours and 50-some minutes. I forget, I have to look it up. But that was pretty nifty. And then Tom actually showed up and ran with me for a little while. By 8 o'clock he showed up. He ran with me for about an hour. And apparently he showed up about 3 in the morning also to see if I was still there, and figured I had quit, not knowing I had narrowly avoided being arrested. So anyway, that's a little bit about my background. I don't want to go on forever. What do I talk about in the book? Again, if I had to condense what's in the book, the efficiency, the full title is The Lazy Man's Guide to Ultramarathon Running, a mad mathematician's research-based, easy-does-it method for optimal training efficiency. So the title is as long as the races I do. But it searches well. So it's all about efficiency. I tell a story in the very beginning of the book. When I first ever started going to the gym, back in the day, before I started going to the gym, I had a friend who started going to the gym, and for 8 months she worked her ass off, except that she didn't, because for 8 months she went to the gym several times a week, worked out real hard, but at the end of 8 months her ass was the same size it was when she started. So she wasn't too happy about that. And I remembered that a couple years later when I started going to the gym, and I thought, I don't want to show up and hope for the best. If I'm going to do something, I want it to work. I want to show up and have my time be as efficient as possible. If I had to condense this entire book into one single sentence, it's that training is not equal to racing. Most people train like it's a race. And so it's not efficient, because if you go... some things that I cover in the book are ketogenic diet is a lot about the ketogenic diet. The ketogenic diet is the single most effective thing you can do to increase your for the training effect. If you go on a 3-week ketogenic diet is defined to be, there's actually a formula in the book for any given meal. If you put in your grams of protein and fat and carbohydrates, and if it's above a certain ratio, then it's ketogenic. The ketogenic diet forces your body to burn fat efficiently. It takes about 3 weeks to get fully keto adapted, and what happens is in that 3 weeks, like I said, your mitochondrial efficiency goes up, your mitochondrial density goes up. So given a certain amount of oxygen, you can process more fat than you would otherwise. And that's good because fat gives you a lot more energy per unit volume. Just to be clear, it's not more efficient to use fat. It takes more oxygen to use fat than it does to use carbs, which is why when you're running out of oxygen, you use more carbs. But by doing a ketogenic diet or other such things that I'll talk about in a minute, you increase the efficiency of your fat processing machinery. So all other things being equal, you can use proportionally a little bit more fat, and that's good. One of the classic ways that training is different from racing is in your long run. All right, the old, quote-unquote, old-school method of training for runners is long, slow distance. And you might be expecting me to say that's no good. That's the exact opposite. Long, slow distance is wonderful. Long, slow distance is effective. Long, slow distance is how Tom Osler went from being a middle-of-the-pack runner to the great champion that he remains. And it's anyone who knows that long, slow distance running is very effective. What most people, Andy Burfoot says, I think more than 80% of your training should be long, slow distance. All the greats agree with this. Frank Shorter, all the great people know that long, slow distance is effective. What most people don't realize is that what do you do if you're going out for a 20-mile training run? What do you do before the run? You eat oatmeal, right? Or you eat something with carbohydrates in it. You got to carb up, right? Maybe have pasta the night before. That's the worst possible thing you can do. The reason long, slow distance is effective is because about 10 miles into a 20-mile run, you burn through a lot of your stored glycogen. Glycogen is the storage form of glucose. You burn through a lot of your stored glycogen, so you're putting yourself into what's called exercise-induced ketosis. The effect of a long, slow distance run, the slow is so that you're going slow enough so you can breathe well enough to burn more fat, and the long is so that you go long enough so you burn through the carbs on board, so that you put yourself in exercise-induced ketosis, so that you get that effect of the ketosis that you would get from the ketogenic diet. You diminish that effect if you eat carbs beforehand. If you carb up before a long, slow distance run, you got to go further before you get the effect. The absolute best way to do a long, slow distance run, well, the best way to do it is while doing a ketogenic diet. But if you're not going to do a ketogenic diet, the best way to do it is fasted. Don't eat anything at all the morning before a run. Show up fasted, you'll induce exercise-induced ketosis earlier in your run proportionally, and then more of your run will have that effect of the ketosis. Yeah, question?
So I was going to mention that, I was going to say about the fasting aspect. But
Yeah.
if you could just quickly talk about what your diet was like on a morning of a run, I'd be interested in hearing that.
Yeah, my diet is this: glass of water. Sometimes I drink green tea. When I go to do a 24-hour race, I drink a can of coconut milk mixed with cocoa powder, and sometimes with a cup of coffee. For a training run, I don't drink anything. I mean, I don't eat anything. I don't take any calories in beforehand. If possible, if I'm being good, then I'll maintain a ketogenic diet at least for 3 weeks leading up to a race. 3 weeks is the minimum you want to do. Once you're adjusted and you've done it for 3 weeks, then the longer the better, basically. That's not to say you want to show up to a race like a marathon or an ultramarathon fasted. The optimal thing to do is, people have forgotten what a carb load is. People think just eat carbs the day before your race. That's not what a carb load is. A carb load is you burn out all the carbohydrates in your muscles about 6 days out, and then that puts you into a state where you have very, very low glycogen, and you do that, you maintain that for several days. You do one more run to burn out the last little bit, and then you carb load, and that causes what's called glycogen supercompensation. So if your average amount of glycogen in your muscles is 100 millimoles per liter, or per gram, now I forget, whatever, say it's at the level is 100 normally, When you supercompensate, you can get up to 150, 170. That's what a carb load properly is. You first got to dip it down low, because then when you refill it, it fills up. That's for a race. For a training run, don't eat anything. For a training run, the best thing to do is on an empty stomach, nothing but water. If you have a question?
You didn't say anything about dark chocolate.
I'm getting there. Yeah, chapter 13 is all about chocolate. So
Yes.
yeah, it's absolutely essential for a training, any training regimen.
Ice cream?
Yeah, let me explain a bit about my pre-race meal. If I'm going to do an ultramarathon, I said I have a can of coconut milk mixed with several tablespoons of chocolate. I will have done carbohydrate supercompensation in the 2 days and the 48 hours leading up to my race. So my muscles are as stocked with carbohydrate as possible. All right? Why? Because eventually you're going to run out. And the more you have on board, the better, as you guys know. But again, the trick is to first deplete yourself and then load up. Coconut milk, not coconut water, but coconut milk that has coconut fat in it. Coconut milk is a great source of what's called MCT, medium chain triglycerides. MCT is a type of fatty acid that preferentially gets converted into ketones when you eat it. So normally you can't be ketotic, which is say producing ketones, and ingesting carbohydrate at the same time. When you ingest carbohydrate, it creates an insulin response. The insulin response turns off the generation of ketones. The reason ketones are important is because, has anyone done marathons or ultramarathons? Has anyone ever hit the wall? Okay. You don't have to hit the wall. It's entirely optional. I've never hit the wall in any race. I've done 15 or so ultramarathons and 15 or so marathons. The effect of hitting the wall comes from running out of glucose while you're running. It's what they used to call the Atkins flu. If you go on a ketogenic diet, about day 2 or 3, you start to get a headache, you start to feel a little nauseated, you don't feel well. It's because you're running out of glucose and your body is upping the amount of ketones available. When you hit the wall, what happens is that happens on the go. So you feel ill because you don't have fuel for your brain. Your body wants to sort of shut down, have you lay down so you can get fuel for your brain. If you are in ketosis already, or if you can do something to mimic being in ketosis, you won't hit the wall because ketones are produced from fat, and you'll have. This gets back to the medium chain triglycerides. Inside the presence of carbohydrate and therefore insulin in your body, if you ingest medium chain triglycerides, such as coconut fat, it gets converted into ketones. So you can be carved up and ketotic at the same time. So the optimal thing for a long distance run like a marathon or an ultramarathon where you want optimal performance, not a training effect, but optimal performance, is to drink something like a medium chain triglyceride oil, or if you do it on cheap like I do, it's just coconut milk. And chocolate. There's an entire chapter on the necessity of eating chocolate. Dark chocolate, not sugar chocolate. Sugar's garbage. Dark chocolate has both a chronic and an acute training effect in and of itself. Chronic means if you take it every day, it has one effect. Acute means if you take it just one time, it has another kind of effect. Dark chocolate, essentially what it does is it helps your blood vessels to be more supple, and it allows more oxygen to go through. It increases the amount of nitric oxide that gets released in your blood vessels. Nitric oxide is what allows you to carry the oxygen, more or less. So basically, by eating more chocolate, you have more oxygen available. More oxygen available means you can access more fat per liter of oxygen, and that means you have more energy. They did a study on rats where, let me see if I remember this correctly. They gave rats, they split them into 2 groups. They either trained or did not train, and each group then either ate or did not eat chocolate. And they found that the group that did not train and did not eat chocolate did not improve on the treadmill after 3 weeks. The group that trained but did not eat chocolate improved, I think, about 24% time to exhaustion on the treadmill. The group that did not train but ate chocolate improved about 23%. So nearly the same level of improvement from not training but eating chocolate. They've done other studies that show that your mitochondrial density is maintained by eating chocolate in the absence of training. So literally, if you're going to not train, if you're going to not run for a while, whether it's because you are not feeling well or you're shut in because of coronavirus or whatever it is, if you eat dark chocolate, it maintains the training effect while you're not training.
How are
They
they
did it-
different acutely and chronically?
Yeah, I was just getting to that, thank you. So so that's the chronic effect of eating chocolate. They did a study in Australia, if you eat one dose of chocolate, so you forget or you forgot to go to the store or whatever, you haven't been eating chocolate, I don't know why you wouldn't want to, but you haven't been eating chocolate for the last several weeks. Oh my gosh, now there's a race. If you eat dark chocolate, as little as 6 grams of dark chocolate, it has an acute effect in that it lowers the exercise burden on your heart. So in other words, because it makes your blood vessels more flexible, your heart doesn't have to work as hard for any given exercise amount. So whatever you're doing, it keeps your blood pressure lower so that you can feel more comfortable the entire race. So it really is like a miracle drug. Let me put it this way, dark chocolate is so powerful, the endurance effect of dark chocolate is so powerful and so well known that if the doping agencies knew any better, it would be illegal as a doping substance. Literally. It literally has the same effect as some of these banned substances. Another one.
When you go to, when I go to ShopRite to get this dark chocolate, it's in the candy aisle, I don't know why, but it is there. And it comes in these bars, and it says cocoa. And you can get 70%, 80%, 90%. So I buy the 90%. And, it's not real sweet like
Right.
chocolate,
But it's tasty.
Does it work, Tom?
but it's the good stuff.
Does it work?
Are you swimming faster?
Well, he's still swimming.
I'm still alive.
Yeah, still alive.
I'm still teaching, so I don't know.
I recommend you don't go below 70% on the dark chocolate. Something like Hershey's Special Dark is 55%. If that's all you can get, that's all you can get. But I recommend you don't go below 70%. 85% dark chocolate is ketogenic. Well, it's not as ketogenic as you like, but it is ketogenic. So if you're on a ketogenic diet, you can eat 85% dark chocolate. 90% is fully ketogenic, so you can literally eat as much 90% dark chocolate as you want while on a ketogenic diet and losing weight. It's fantastic. Let's see, some other things that are good for efficiency. Going to the sauna. Anyone who doesn't go to the sauna, they did a study on runners, a very small study, but they did a study on trained runners, and they had them go to a sauna until they couldn't stand it, and they averaged about 29 minutes in the sauna. On average, I think 12 times in the 3-week course of the study. They calculated that they had them run at their 5K pace to exhaustion, and they calculated that the time to exhaustion went up, I think, 20%, and they calculated that should equate to loss of 1.5% on their 5K time. So if you imagine whatever your 5K time is, and making no other change in your training regimen other than going to the sauna 3-4 times a week, and taking 1.5% off your time, that's a pretty huge improvement. Another one is garlic. Garlic has all kinds of effects like this. Green tea has to be taken on an empty stomach because the active ingredients will get absorbed by chemicals in your food if you eat it with food. So green tea on an empty stomach is good like that. In the book I talk about running barefoot. I ran entirely barefoot up to the first time I did 20 miles. And then after that, for I did a 21.5 mile, 23.5 mile, and then the marathon I ran wearing water shoes, actually, like from Walmart, $5 water shoes. And then when I went to do 50 miles the first time, my dad suggested I buy some Vibram 5 Fingers because he said, this running thing doesn't seem like a fad for you, so maybe you should buy some shoes. So Vibram 5 Fingers are like a shoe that's kind of like a glove for your foot. It's just like running barefoot, but with something on your foot. So I run in those almost all the time now because they're so comfortable. I recommend everybody, if you don't do it, learn to run barefoot. You cannot just go out and run barefoot because your Achilles tendon, if you're not used to running with a 4-foot plant, when you run barefoot, you can't help but, let me take these off. You can't help but have a good running style when you run barefoot. The proper running style that's most efficient is to run in place. So if you run in place, then you can't help but land on the front part of your foot. And then if you want to go faster, you run in place and then you lean forward. So you can go any speed just by leaning forward more. Running is all about controlled falling, right? So the human body is designed to run biomechanically by running on the front part of your foot. And this also protects your knees because if you think about it, when you land on the front part of your foot, your knee and your ankle act like a shock absorber. So instead of the force being transferred up the bony structure of your leg, it's absorbed in your Achilles tendon and in your muscles. And in fact, they did a study at Harvard, I think it was at Harvard, that when you run barefoot or barefoot style, running on the front part of your foot, you actually save 5 to 8% energy because the Achilles tendon is designed to act like a spring and to translate some of that landing energy into a spring moving forward. So what I recommend is you do couch to 5K barefoot. Imagine like you've never run before and just do the 3-month training program 3 times a week running barefoot. Tear through the socks as the plantar skin on your feet gets tougher, and then after a few weeks of that you'll be tough enough to just handle it. Let's see, what else I want. Oh, fasted training. I meant to mention before we got distracted by the chocolate, thank God. They did a study on mice where they trained every other day. No, sorry, they ate every other day. They ate every other day and they trained every day. And it turns out that training while fasted, again, increases your mitochondrial density of your muscles. It makes your muscles more thrifty with sugar. It makes your muscles firmer and harder and more dense. Fasted training is very, very good for you. People say, oh, I got to have protein, I got to have carbs, I got to have whatever. Actually, you don't need any of that. Your body is very, very good at what it does. You can run fasted. If I do a long run, again, ideally you do it fasted and then eat protein afterwards. Let's see, what else do I want to talk about? Well, I don't know. You guys have some questions?
What about aging and all this?
Aging, yeah. So actually, again, I do intermittent fasting, so I fast every day. I don't eat before about 9 p.m. usually, although today I had a snack before. I didn't eat till 6 p.m. But fasting and the ketogenic diet are both shown to retard aging. So actually, they've done a lot of studies now on what they call calorie restriction, and how calorie restriction retards aging. But fasting is better at retarding aging because calorie restriction causes all sorts of hormonal imbalances from not having enough calories. But if you do intermittent fasting, or you fast 1 day a week, 24 hours, 1 day a week or something like that, it actually makes you age slower. So, and as far, the other thing about that is the main thing about aging is that people think that you just get old. Tom and I argue about this all the time, but I have science on my side. He has being old on his side, so, it used to be that the notion was that you just got old. And as you get old, things just don't work as well. The quote-unquote diseases of aging generally have to do with protein breakdown. We tend to lose protein as we get older, in some certain ratio or whatever like that, but we don't have to. What happens is the mTOR pathways, the signaling pathways in your cells and in your muscles that tell your body to put on more muscle, put on more protein, keep everything churning, don't work as efficiently because over time they degrade. So the trick is to increase your protein level. If an adult person, if you have 30 grams of protein in a meal, 30 grams of protein is enough to get enough leucine, which is what activates the mTOR pathway, to give a signal, an anabolic signal to your body. So if you start having 30 grams of protein per meal, your body will start getting a strong anabolic signal, and all these things that were starting to sort of go downhill will start to either halt or reverse. And yeah, so as far as, does that answer your question?
Kind of, sort of, but a lot of the stuff you're talking about, I try to look at myself and getting older and all that. Does it work for older people?
Yeah.
You're in a room full of us.
Yeah. So the best thing
is well, chocolate lower my blood pressure.
Yeah, chocolate will lower your blood. Yeah, all of these
things
all
work.
the
time, and I can get off the drugs.
Literally, actually, like high blood pressure is not something that is normal for people. It's with some medical exceptions, it's generally a lifestyle thing. You can actually reverse high blood pressure by using a ketogenic diet, or by using fasting, or by using a combination of them. All of this stuff works. You just have to you have to be sort of sensible about it. The main upshot of my book is slow down. You run too fast. Most people push themselves too much, and that causes the problem. People think that exercise makes you stronger, right? How many people think exercise makes you stronger, right? Exercise does not make you stronger. Exercise, properly performed, makes you weaker. The point of exercise is to make you weaker so that when you get proper nutrition and proper rest, your body builds itself back up stronger. If you're exercising properly, it's not making you stronger, it's making you weaker. Rest and recovery make you stronger. So a lot of what I'm talking about actually is ideal for the older athlete, because the idea is if you slow down a little bit, if you take it a little bit easier, and you provide more of the things that your body actually wants in the first place, you'll actually find yourself getting stronger than otherwise.
What I find is that as I age anyway, I'm losing more muscle mass. I've lost 2 inches off my height. And I definitely, and how do you add muscle mass?
Yeah, great question.
I do crazy stuff.
So what you'll want to do is you'll want to start eating 30 grams of protein at every meal, at least at 2 meals a day. Ideally, if you eat 3 meals a day, have 30 grams of protein at each of 3 meals. 30 grams of protein provides enough leucine that when it's in your bloodstream, it activates the mTOR pathway, which sends an anabolic signal to your muscles. So it's sort of everything I do is all about natural. I don't use performance-enhancing drugs of any kind. I don't really believe in it. But it's the same effect, the natural effect of taking, for example, anabolic steroids. Anabolic steroids will force an anabolic response. That's what they're for. Taking a high dose of protein does the same thing, but it does it through a natural pathway. So yeah, you actually can reverse muscle loss, again, by working out intelligently, so you're not working out too hard, and increasing your protein on a per meal basis. You need 30 grams per meal to get that leucine, unless you supplement just with leucine, but that's getting to a level most people don't want to have to think about it that much. 30 grams is a nice, easy recipe.
Just one more question.
Sure, yeah.
Where does beer all play in?
Yeah, beer. So beer is a very good drink for runners. I don't drink myself, but beer has a mild analgesic effect, which is to say a pain-killing effect. Beer, of course, thins your blood, so it reduces your blood pressure, and it provides carbohydrates. So beer is, for those who like to drink beer, it does have a slightly dehydrating effect, so you need to make sure that you're staying hydrated appropriately, of course. But yeah, beer is perfectly fine for runners.
Beer or any alcohol?
Beer specifically has been shown to have an analgesic effect and to have the benefits that I mentioned. In fact, so much so that alcohol-free beer has been studied for its recovery effect. Having an alcohol-free beer after a run helps the recovery process. Oh, other things, by the way, while I'm on the subject, dark cherry juice. Anything that comes from a fruit that has like the phytonutrients, the dark colored, blueberry juice, dark cherry juice, that kind of thing.
Grape juice.
Grape juice, yeah.
Wine?
Say again? Wine, certainly wine, red wine in particular, are all good for post-race recovery.
What are you eating while you're running these long distances? You're doing taking goo, anything?
I don't like artificial stuff like goo. When I do ultra marathons, I pack a lot of junk food. My friend Kevin Hughes, who Tom also cites as the most gifted mathematician he's ever known, made that if you're going to keep doing these things, you're going to have to eventually learn to run on something other than Pop-Tarts. The night that I did the 50 miles by myself overnight, I had a bag of guacamole tortilla chips and a box of zebra cakes. So
You carry that with you?
that's the kind of garbage I eat when I'm running. I eat stuff that I don't normally eat because it gives me a mental lift. I get to, like every hour during a 24-hour race, I'll plan like what kind of garbage I'm going to eat. I'm going to have a Pop-Tart, after the end of the hour, something like that. Yeah.
One more, Chris.
Yeah, please.
Can I buy your book?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I have copies of the book available at $20 each. They're $26.20 on Amazon. Get it? So you save a little bit if you want to get it here. And yeah.
Have you ever read the book, the 80-20 rule?
The 80-20, I know the 80-20 rule.
It talks about
yeah, so the 80-20 rule is
80% of your running should be done in the slow pace and 20% in the fast. Do you do any training in the fast?
Oh yeah, great question. So there's the book is it's called The Lazy Man's Guide, but really it's about being efficient, right? So if you want to get the most effect, you want to do a ketogenic diet. The next best thing is to do fasted training. But if you're pressed for time, or you want to, or if you like running fast, those of you that do, McMaster University did a series of studies on the effect of what we call high-intensity interval training. Now, the long story short is they found that the increase in your VO2 max was the same if you did an hour a day for 5 days of moderate pace running versus one single 20-minute workout consisting of running all out for 30 seconds followed by 1.5 minutes of recovery. So, and when I say all out, I mean like the tiger's about to get you. So I actually have a protocol in my book for what I call an easy interval training. In fact, intervals are actually anymore one of the only things I do because I can get a good workout in 20 minutes. There's various ways of doing intervals. Again, I like to do it the most efficient and easy way. I do 400 meters with 4 minutes recovery, 300 meters with 3 minutes recovery, 200 meters with 2 minutes recovery, and 100 meters with 1 minute of recovery. And I do that not like I'm getting chased by the tiger, but basically as fast as I feel like it. And that gives you a very good training effect. So yeah, there's definitely a very good training effect from high intensity interval training. Yeah, I can get into the biochemistry of it, but essentially yes, I do that. It kind of depends on my mood. I like to go for a long run if I have time, you know, just because I like to get out there and just, you know, think my thoughts and that kind of thing. I consider it like a little vacation. But anymore with you know, job and family and everything like that, I tend to go to the gym, do a half-hour intervals on the treadmill, sit in a sauna for a half an hour, and then go home. And to be fair, if I don't have enough time, I skip the run, not the sauna. So.
How about the combination, doing a long, slow run and then finishing the last, you know, part?
Yeah, so like what they call fartleks, or like, I think it was Amby Burfo was a big believer in these, doing like an 800 meter, maybe he was referring that you suggested in your book. Anyway, doing like an 800 meter pickup in the middle of a long run is great. The only issue is that depending on when you do it in a long run, you want to be careful because towards the end of a long run, your everything is sort of getting more tired and things like that. So you want to do it when you're fresh enough that you can do it effectively. Rule number one, the best way to run at a good pace is to show up to the starting line healthy. And that means with no niggling injuries, no nothing like that, but to show up healthy and well. So you don't want to ever do anything that could cause you to get injured. I am very strongly risk averse. I learned that from Tom's book, Ultramarathon, and the Next Challenge, where he talked about his 3-day time trial and how much he had to deal with a blister. Don't get a blister, no matter what. That'll mess up your time.
Thank you very much.
Oh yeah.
All right, let's thank Sky. And I have a glass for his coconut drink. And for chocolate, there's plenty of room.
Yeah, very good, very good. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Roger is going to talk about his race.
Oh, yeah, this is a disaster area, guys. Tom was kind enough to, it was Ed who put out the ad yesterday for it, just in time for the university to cancel everything. So, those of you who've already registered for the fundraiser for the law school, there's an opportunity coming along to get your money back. I hope you won't take it. Please give us the money because it goes to a good cause to support students over the summer who do good stuff like domestic violence clinics and so on. I'm very grateful to all of you who supported us over the years. Tom was one of the first who came along and supported, and we'll be back again next year. Well, assuming there's a university next year. Well, it's still going. Thanks a lot.
So with that, we're done. Thank you very much.
Nice intro.
This guy want to set up somewhere?
Yeah, if anyone wants the book, I have some in the back.
Yeah, we are the oldest.